I'm Suze Shaner with Sage Leadership Strategies, and I'm your host today of Community Forum. And I have the great pleasure to have with me Sue Giglio, who is the Executive Director of the Family Network based in Danbury, Connecticut, and Joel Levitt, who is the Fatherhood Engagement Specialist, here to talk to us about the Family Network. Welcome.
Happy to be here.
Thanks so much for the opportunity.
Yeah, great to have you. I think you're the best kept secret, which is why I wanted to have you on the show.
We hear that.
Yes, I met both of you, just to let our audience know, a couple of weeks ago at a community luncheon. And I was like, what? Why don't I know about you? I've never heard about this organization. And in full disclosure, it would have been really nice to know about this organization 15 years ago when I was blending families with my special son who has severe special needs. So I'm very happy to hear that there's an organization like yours out there in the world doing all this good work. So first thing is, can you tell our audience about the Family Network? What is your mission? It's to ensure all families receive the support they need in order to get their children off to a safe and healthy start. But tell us how it got started and a little bit about the programs that you run.
Absolutely. We started as a single program that was just getting out nationally, the Healthy Families America program. And it was founded by a retired pediatrician, Dr. Robert Joy, and his wife, Nan, and also his partner in pediatric care, Dr. Alvin Goldman. And they learned through this program that was known nationally as an opportunity for families to get support, particularly new families at birth, to really essentially get children off to a very healthy start. And ultimately, the concern is to avoid and prevent child abuse and neglect.
Yeah, this is an interesting aspect of your mission, because when you were first telling me about it, you said we prevent child abuse, and I thought that's interesting. What parent is going to say, I'm going to abuse my child? But it's more about, as you're saying, how to get parents off to the best start possible, especially new parents, because that can be overwhelming being a new parent.
Yep. Building skills and making sure that families, particularly stressed families, are aware of the resources and support systems in the community. So a lot of what we do is connecting families to resources and helping them to understand and learn about child development and normal growth, and what parents can do to really foster a very healthy bonding initially, and even as early as during pregnancy, and building resiliency within children.
Well, you're hitting on a really important point, and that is, in our society, it's expected for most people that you grow up, you get married, you have kids, but we're not usually taught in school, unless you specifically take a course on child development, how to be a parent. And so typically your only model is the parents that you grew up with, and either if you lucked out and your parents were, in the words of, I forget what child development psychologist said, good enough parents, then you have that to go on. If you didn't have that experience, and you may not be aware that it wasn't a good experience, you're going to replicate what you had. So it seems to me like a parenting course could be good for anyone who's thinking to have a child.
Anyone at all. And so we really do want to emphasize that it's not about income levels or a particular geography that you're living in. All families could use the support. And it really is a matter of helping families to identify their strengths and where some of their challenges are, and how they might get some support around those challenges. And if need be, and if we could be of assistance to help them really ameliorate some of the greatest challenges. It's really when families have compounded stress, that chronic and toxic stress is when it can be a dangerous circumstance. So our services are aimed at prevention
Yeah, I
and
was wondering I was wondering about that because when you said that, identify families who are under stress, and being a new parent is stressful anyway in the best of
sure.
circumstances because you're learning, especially when you're a first time parent. If you have multiple kids, and that's a whole other thing. But um, so, and I know you said that part of how you identify people who could potentially use your services is through pediatricians. What are some other ways? And I'm hoping shows like this can get the word out there. But how would families even know you exist? And I want our audience to know, because when I was first talking to you about this, I was like, wow, that would have been great. I'm somebody who's a researcher who went out there to try to find resources, and
Mhm.
you were right here in my community. I didn't know you existed. So I know one conduit is through pediatricians, but pediatricians, you know, are great, but they may not read the signs, or they may not necessarily know about you. What are other ways in which
Sure.
people come to you?
We're fortunate to have been providing these intensive home visiting services for now 24 years. I explained as we started out as one primary prevention program and have ultimately incorporated into our own nonprofit, which is known as Families Network today. And we have a number of programs, but the intensive home visiting still seem to be our predominant programs, but we really pride ourselves in being out in the community. And we're most proud of referrals when they hear by word of mouth. When someone that we've been able to support really encourages someone in their own realm of family, friends, neighbors into the services. But we are funded through the state of Connecticut Office of Early Childhood, and I think as a statewide organization, we're also learned a lot in the 25 plus years that they've been supporting programs, financially supporting programs. So we're definitely working at ways to get out more information and concern uh, to families to let them know and do much more promoting and information. So they're doing an awful lot about that. And luckily, we service Danbury and the greater Danbury community. We're a part of the entire Western Connecticut collaborative to provide services and the like. Might be a different model, a different way in which they provide the home visiting, but there are a number of us that it is a strong collaborative. So that there should be a family support program and home visiting options for all families. And you might hear about that through 211, which is the statewide information program. But here locally, we really try to get out into the community and be present. Certainly, and that's why we're part of the reason why we're so grateful to have this conversation with you today, is because certainly for the last couple of years, the pandemic has hurt our ability to be out in the public. Our normal ways of reaching out to families and being at, for example, like being at community fairs and events where families are out and about, they just weren't happening through the pandemic. So
Yeah,
we're
no, that's great. And like I said, I mean, my kids are grown now, so I
mhm,
don't have a need for it. Although your kids need you throughout their lives. I'm not I don't mean to be saying that, but
for sure.
you know, but and that's how I found out about you, was through a community luncheon. So that's fantastic. And it sounds like, so state funded. Also know that if folks want to donate, they can. So
Mhm.
you do accept donations, but largely state funded. So that's good. And so tell us a little bit about if a family felt like they were stressed, like you said, not just like having a bad day, because we all have bad days, but it was, a compound of stressors, and they felt like they needed additional support and resources, what would they do? How would they just contact you, call you up through the website? What would they do?
For us particularly, they certainly could contact us through visiting our website, which is www.fnwc for Families Network of Western Connecticut.org, or email us or find us on Facebook. We have a Facebook page, again, Families Network of Western Connecticut, or our telephone number is 203-791-8773. But we're very fortunate to have, like Joel himself, individuals out there really trying to make connections with the community providers, with folks who have an opportunity to be in a large company. So certainly through their pediatricians, through a trusted friend, through a nurse, through their
Yeah.
school system or their early education.
Okay. So I want to talk for a minute about some of the programs that you offer. And so Joel's here because he's your father engagement specialist. So I'm wondering, Joel, if you can tell us a little bit about how you came to Family Network, what it is that you do, father engagement specialist. It sounds very interesting. Can you tell us what programs you run and how that works?
So I came to Families Network maybe 10 years ago as a volunteer. And Sue had mentioned Dr. Joy and Ann Joy and Dr. Alvin Goldman, all of whom I knew quite well. And Alvin was a good friend of mine. And when I retired after 30 years as the music and art coordinator for Danbury Schools, I was looking for something to volunteer for. And Alvin said, about Families Network. I said, okay. And I met Sue actually at an outreach program in the community.
Yes.
And she said, we have this fatherhood program, and would you be interested? And I said, sure. By then, I was not a grandfather yet. So I was very happy to do it and volunteered prior to the pandemic, when we had a number of programs running in the evenings for dads. And then, of course, during the pandemic, everything kind of slowed down. And then over the course of that, Sue and her colleagues were able to obtain a grant from the Connecticut State Office of Early Childhood, and she offered me a job. So I thought, okay, that's interesting. So I became the fatherhood engagement specialist. My title is actually longer than that, but I told Sue at my age I can't remember more than 3 words in a row. So I don't use the whole title. And my job really is to go out there into the community and gather support for father education programs, but also for all the programs that we offer at Families Network, because truly it is a very all-encompassing organization with tremendous reach, but also with tremendous heart. I mean, I've been involved in the greater Danbury community for well over 40 years, and this is one of the best organizations I've known. A large degree of that is to Sue, who's just been magnificent, and also to the many volunteers and workers that we have, community people who really put their heart into everything they do. So the fatherhood component is a part of that. And we offer a variety of classes in the evenings generally for dads from all walks of life, all life experiences, backgrounds. And we draw from that diversity of the greater Danbury community. So currently
Joel, I want to step in here for a second. I
Sure,
want to
you
ask
have to with me.
because I think this is really interesting because typically, historically, men are not people to reach out and do a fatherhood kind of program. Either wouldn't self-identify or maybe not necessarily be comfortable. I mean, mothers might be more likely to do that. So can you say a little bit about, again, like how dads come to you? What's the nature of the program? What do you do in the program? Maybe cite a particularly challenging situation or a success case with a dad. Can you kind of take us through a scenario with that?
Okay, well, what you said is absolutely true. My experience has been that dads are not going to contact us generally. We have to go out and beat the hustings and find them. And a lot of this is through community engagement with the schools, with OBGYN practices, pediatric practices, everywhere. We turn to everywhere
So
to try and
do you
find these dads.
sorry, I'm periodically, I'm going to interrupt you because I got a lot of questions about this.
You have
So
to.
typically, um, do you typically hear that like a dad's disengaged or a dad's stressed or a dad lost their job? Like what do you hear that like, hey, this dad could use some support and services? Because like you said, men won't typically, I mean, this is just generally speaking, gross generalization. We know there's exceptions, but generally men won't self-identify. And even if you reach out to them, they'd be like, no, I don't need that. I'm good. So
Right.
yeah.
Well, that was true even before the pandemic. The pandemic, of course, has made things much more difficult in terms of reaching out, but also in terms of people recognizing what their needs are.
Yeah.
So oftentimes it is the mother of the child who reaches out, and that's the person that may contact us about the father of the child, who may not be her husband. And we do have many dads who come to us through the mothers of their children, which is
Mhm.
great. That's a wonderful reference to get that. So
Yeah,
we
and what
enjoy that.
and what do they typically say? Do they say like he's not engaged, he's not supporting me, he's not like or do they say I think he just needs some help figuring out how to be a father? Like what do they
Yeah.
typically come to you with?
I think it's more of the latter, because in essence, what the mom is saying is that we have a situation that I'd like some help with, and that the dad is probably willing to do this if you'll reach out to him, which is what we do.
Mhm.
Okay,
We're
and
happy to do it.
when you reach out to him, you say, "Hey," like what you're the specialist, right? Like so when you reach out, what do let's grab coffee. Like what do you say and how do you get him into a program and what's the nature of the program?
Might be around co-parenting, that
Yeah,
there might be some, right, so much of the education and so much of regardless of which parent it might be, it's all about relationships, the relationships that they have with maybe their parents, the relationship and grandparents, and how is that impacting the relationship between the parents, whether they're in the same household or not, and how they nurture and kind of what they bring to the family, as how, back to your point of how they were raised, and in times of ultimate stress, you resort to what you know, so how you were parented, and if that's in a physical way, then that's what when you've tried all else, that's what you're going to resort to. It might be
Yes.
around,
So
it's those relationships, the quality of the
okay.
relationships, and the relationships with their children. Maybe they want to get closer. They might be experiencing a divorce. There
true.
might, right? So again, trying to foster through uh, um, and that nurturing relationship under stress, under times of stress
And I
and
think the
challenge.
first thing that we do really in trying to assist anyone is to be a good listener. I mean, that's really important. So, what I would like to know when I speak to dads is tell me about your life. What's going on in your day, in your life? And then we talk about what we offer at Families Network to provide assistance.
Fabulous. And so what kind of program when you get somebody into a program, a dad, what kind of things will he learn and what kind of support will he get?
Okay, I'm going to use a visual aid. This is called Dr. Dad, and it's a program that will be coming up very shortly at Families Network. And it really is geared to the expectant and or first time father of infants, toddlers, children around the age of 2 or below, or of a dad who is or a man who's expecting to be a dad. And we have those guys too in the program. So that's a basic program about babies, what to expect about babyhood. Believe me, I wish that they had a program like this over 40 years ago when I became a first time dad. And I didn't have anyone to speak to because my own dad had passed away years before. So we provide that kind of nitty gritty information, the well child, the sick child, the safe child. Those are all fundamental things that new dads, many of whom are quite young, by the way, um, would be welcome to learn.
And so that's interesting. Yeah, I remember my husband when I was pregnant with my daughter. I remember him saying, "I had a dream. She was sitting, the baby was sitting up in a high chair and talking to me." And I was like, "Well, that's going to be a few months before that happens." I was like, you didn't really kind of get that concept. Um, but yeah, so I'm curious about how the dads receive this information on child development and then what you do in terms of their role in helping nurture and develop the child. Because I just think, as a society, we don't always use those two words together. Nurturance seems to be, historically, traditionally speaking, hopefully it's changing, but, just the mom's role. But in terms of how the father can nurture the child, especially since so much in the first year of life is with the mother, especially if the mother's nursing, and how the father can feel included in that process and important in
So
that
important.
process.
So important.
Oh, yes. Well, every child has two parents, and it's not always the case that both parents are present in the same household. So co-parenting and how to learn how to co-parent successfully is a very critical issue. And I'm glad you mentioned the word nurturing, because we also have a program which is going on right now called the Nurturing Father, and this is the journal from it. So nurturing is not, as it was years ago, the mom's job, and it's dad's job as well, and it's a wonderful job to have. I'm a grandparent. My wife and I helped raise our grandchildren up until recently, and it was a great pleasure to be open and free about nurturing grandchildren in a way that perhaps 40 years ago I wasn't as open to, as a young father myself.
Oh, so that's fantastic. So the Nurturing Father, that program, so that's geared towards fathers who have children of any age
Of
or
any
Any
age,
age.
exactly,
Any
yes.
age.
Yep, it's a very diverse group.
okay,
It
so
could
they have
range
teenagers.
from, I'm
They
sorry,
could have,
what?
sorry, they could have teenagers.
Hmm.
Yes, yes, yes.
We've had granddads who want recognize that they didn't have the relationship with
Uh,
their sons the way that they would like, and want to learn more and want to do differently with their grandchildren. So that certainly could be the case. But it's sometimes it's just learning new ways, new ideas as times pass. For many dads, culturally, it's I provide. That's my job. So I'm a good provider. And so that takes me out of the home. I'm not, I don't spend a lot of time with my children, with my family, because I'm working so hard to be a good dad, to be a provider. And it's kind of putting a bit of a frame on so much more is needed. And you're so important. The dad's role is so important. So it's a matter of, again, back to that co-parenting, and what's your relationship like with the mother of the child if you are um, more involved in the hands-on day to day and supportive, and just kind of changes the whole dynamic in
Yeah.
a way that can bring stress down, and can and therefore the whole family system is more nurturing, more calm, more less anxiety, less
Well, I'm
and
glad
certainly then
I'm
less danger.
Yeah, I want to pick up on that. I'm glad you're speaking to that because, my day job is about leadership development, and I think that's really the focus of your program is like parents as leaders and how they create the culture and set the tone in their families. So my mom always said, if the mom's okay, the family will be okay. Well, I mean, I think both parents have to be okay, but but do you, what kind of work do you do, if any, with couples? I know you have a program that's around a family skills program, and I think it's focused on stress management, anger management, household management. Can you speak to that at all in terms of working with the couples and the family? We've got like 3 minutes, but I wonder what kind of light you can shed on that.
Sure, and really, it's not specific to any particular program, I would point us back to the home visiting programs and the models. We're seeing more and more, and we work hard to make sure that we're more available evenings and weekends when dads are more available to us. But certainly we have one and done, just workshops at any time for both parents, just on perhaps stress management or such. Or we have the parenting classes, and we are always offering a different myriad of curriculums, and that's where they get their name. And then certainly with home visiting being again.
Well, I know you
Okay.
have also, which we were talking about before we came on air, the Parent Leadership Institute, where you're
Mhm.
helping parents develop skills and understand the political system and the ways they can be leaders in the community to advocate for children. We've got like 2 minutes. Is there anything you want to say about that particular program?
The Parent Leadership Training Institute was originated here in Connecticut, but is national and international. And that's a program that focuses on developing leadership skills within helping parents find their voice and their interest in the community, learn how the community works, how governments work, and identify a change that they'd like to see happen, whether that's working within the school system on a bullying project, or lunch program, and being able to bring allow the children to bring the leftover lunches home for the evening and weekends, to absolutely anything in their interest.
Okay, so it sounds like you've got a couple of structured programs. Obviously, the new parents in home services. You've got the father program, a couple of different father programs. You have different kinds of outreach for families in stress, and a number of other kinds of initiatives and programs, so that if there was a family that felt that they could use their services, or someone is thinking about a family, whether it's a therapist, social
Correct.
worker, nurse, somebody in the community, a friend,
Absolutely.
they would reference you and consult with you and see how you can help them and support them, whether it's a program you have or a resource in the community. So,
Absolutely.
by way of closing, can you share your contact information again before we end?
Absolutely. www.fnwc.org, or search for us on Facebook.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you so much for joining us on the show. Until next time, I'm Suze Shaner with Community Forum.
Thank you.
Pleasure.